Look, I have been a customs officer for the Galactic Trade Commission for exactly 17 cycles now. 17. That is a long time to stand at the same processing terminal, scanning cargo manifests, checking biological permits, and dealing with the endless parade of traders who think the rules do not apply to them. And in all those cycles, in all those thousands upon thousands of encounters, I can tell you with absolute certainty that I have never ever met anyone quite like Flynn Mackenzie. The human showed up on a Tuesday. Well, our equivalent of Tuesday. The day was unremarkable, really. 3 Vorathian merchant ships, 2 Quilix passenger cruisers, and 1 absolutely tiny, beat-up, barely functional human vessel that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts found in a junkyard. Seriously. The thing was held together with what appeared to be metal tape and pure stubbornness. My name is Quilix, by the way. Senior Processing Agent Quilix of Station 12. And when Flynn Mackenzie's ship docked at Bay 7, I should have known. I really should have known. The warning signs were all there, flashing like emergency beacons. First off, the ship registration was listed under the name The Audacity. Not Brave Explorer, or Star Traveler, or anything remotely professional, just The Audacity. Second, the cargo manifest was creative. Very creative. It listed items like miscellaneous goods, samples of local interest, and my personal favorite, stuff that seemed useful at the time. But no, did I flag it for additional screening? Did I call for backup? Did I exercise even the smallest amount of caution? Absolutely not, because I am apparently an idiot who has learned nothing in 17 cycles of service. Flynn walked through the airlock wearing what I later learned was called a tank top and board shorts. His footwear consisted of rubber sandals, on a space station. His skin was tanned from whatever star his homeworld orbits, and he had this wide, easy grin that immediately made me suspicious. Humans do not grin like that, unless they are either about to do something incredibly stupid, or have already done something incredibly stupid, and have not been caught yet. "G'day, mate," he announced, his voice carrying that distinctive accent I had only heard in human entertainment broadcasts. "How's it going? Beautiful station you got here. Really top-notch. Love what you have done with the lighting." I stared at him. Just stared. Because what do you even say to that? This was a customs checkpoint, not a social gathering. But humans, I have learned, do not seem to understand professional boundaries. "Name and planet of origin," I said, keeping my voice flat and official. "Flynn Mackenzie, straight out of Melbourne, Earth," he replied, still grinning. "That is on the Australian continent, if you are keeping track. Brought some goods to trade, hoping to make a few credits, maybe see the sights. You know how it is." No, I did not know how it is, because most traders arrive with proper documentation, approved cargo, and at least a basic understanding of commercial trade law. But I was trying to be patient. The Galactic Commission had recently issued a memo about cultural sensitivity and not stereotyping species based on limited interactions. So I pulled up his file and started the standard processing. That is when I noticed something odd. His cargo hold scan showed biological material, living biological material, which you know requires about 16 different permits, 3 quarantine certifications, and approval from the Biological Safety Council, none of which Flynn Mackenzie possessed. "Mr. Mackenzie," I said slowly, "my scan indicates you are transporting living organisms. Do you have the appropriate permits?" He blinked at me. Actually blinked, like he had no idea what I was talking about. Then he laughed, a genuine from-the-belly laugh that echoed through the processing chamber. "Oh, that," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Nah, mate, that is just Kevin." Kevin. The unregistered biological organism in his cargo hold was named Kevin. I felt my head crest flatten in stress, a biological response my species has when confronted with truly baffling situations. "Who or what is Kevin?" "Kevin is my emotional support crocodile," Flynn explained, as if this was the most normal thing in the galaxy. "Had him since he was just a little nipper. He comes everywhere with me. Emotional support. Crocodile." Now, I pride myself on maintaining professional composure. I have processed Mytharian slime merchants, Kragoth warriors with anger management issues, and even a Fenrali poet who insisted on reciting his entire latest work while I reviewed his papers. But this was testing me in ways I had never experienced. Mr. Mackenzie, I said, my voice very, very calm, you cannot bring an unregistered predatory reptile onto a Galactic Commission station. That violates approximately 47 separate regulations. Possibly more. I will need to check. The grin finally faded from Flynn's face. He looked at me with what appeared to be genuine confusion. Predatory? Kevin? Mate, he would not hurt a fly. Well, actually, he would definitely hurt a fly. And probably eat it. But he is completely harmless to people. Mostly. I mean, you just got to know how to handle him right. You cannot keep a crocodile as a pet, I said. Sure you can. Tons of people back home have reptiles. Not on a space station you cannot. Why not? Because it is illegal. That seems like an overreaction, honestly. And that right there was the moment I realized Flynn Mackenzie was going to be a problem. A big problem. The kind of problem that generates reports and incident files and mandatory retraining sessions for everyone involved. But I had no idea at all, about what was coming, because Kevin was not even the biggest issue. Not by a long shot. So there I was, standing at my processing terminal, arguing with a human in rubber sandals about his illegal emotional support crocodile, when the real catastrophe began. The station alarms went off. Not the gentle please proceed to your designated areas alarms. No. These were the full-scale red alert, everyone is probably going to die alarms. The kind that make your internal organs vibrate and your survival instincts scream at you to run in the opposite direction of whatever is happening. Flynn looked up at the flashing lights. That seems bad, he said in the most spectacular understatement I had heard all cycle. My console lit up with emergency alerts. A Crevix trading vessel in Bay 12 had suffered a catastrophic containment failure. The cargo, pressurized volatile compounds used in industrial mining. Apparently some genius had stored them incorrectly, and now they were leaking into the station atmosphere. We had approximately 18 minutes before the concentration reached explosive levels. 18 minutes before Station 12 became a very large, very expensive fireball. All personnel, evacuate immediately. The announcement system blared. This is not a drill. Repeat. This is not a drill. Proceed to emergency shuttles. Around me, beings from a dozen different species scrambled toward the exits. Traders abandoning cargo, families clutching younglings, station workers running like their lives depended on it. Which, to be fair, they absolutely did. I should have run too. Protocol said, run. Common sense said run. My supervisor, if she survived this, would definitely say I should have run. But there was a problem. Bay 12 was in the lower commercial sector. The same sector that housed the biological containment units, where we kept quarantined specimens, medical samples, and endangered species awaiting transport to conservation facilities. 37 beings, incapable of evacuating themselves, were trapped down there. And the emergency bulkheads had already sealed, cutting off access from the main station. Someone had to override the containment systems, manually, from inside the sector. That someone was supposed to be the chief safety officer. But guess what? He had already evacuated, took the first shuttle out, the coward. I stood there, frozen, calculating survival probabilities. They were not good at all. Your mates are trapped down there, yeah? Flynn asked quietly. I turned to look at him, surprised he was still present. You need to evacuate. Now, not really the evacuating type, mate, he said, shrugging. Where is the manual override? You cannot possibly be serious. Dead serious, he replied. And that grin was back. Look, I got into this mess by breaking your rules. Least I can do is break a few more to help fix things. Besides, I have dealt with worse back home. Worse than explosive chemical contamination on a space station. Mate, I once got trapped in the outback with nothing but a pocket knife and a really angry cassowary. This is basically the same thing, just with more metal and less bird. That made absolutely zero sense. But we were wasting time arguing, and those beings in containment did not have time. So I made a decision that would either save lives or end my career. Possibly both. Bay 12, Sub-Level 3, emergency access panel behind the cargo lifts. I said quickly, you need to enter override code 749 Delta, then manually vent the compartment to space before the compounds ignite. Easy, Flynn said, already running toward the service corridor. Wait, I called after him. You will need protective gear. The contamination levels are already critical. He just waved over his shoulder. I will hold my breath. That is not how atmospheric contamination works. That is not how any of this works. But he was gone, disappearing into the smoke-filled corridors while I stood there like an idiot, wondering if I had just sent a human to his death. I pulled up the security monitors, my claws trembling as I tracked his progress. He moved fast, surprisingly fast, vaulting over debris, squeezing through partially sealed doorways. The timer showed 12 minutes remaining. Flynn reached Bay 12. The contamination readings in that sector were off the scale. Lethal levels. Absolutely lethal. No being should have survived more than 90 seconds in that environment. The human lasted 4 minutes. 4 minutes of working the override panel while toxic fumes filled his lungs. 4 minutes of manually cranking the emergency vent while alarms screamed warnings. I watched on the monitor as he staggered, collapsed against the wall, then got back up and kept working. Stubborn. Absolutely, ridiculously stubborn. The vent opened. Atmosphere rushed out into space, taking the volatile compounds with it. The contamination levels dropped. Slowly, then faster. The explosion risk decreased from certain to probable, to unlikely to minimal. Station 12 was saved, but Flynn was not moving. I abandoned my post and ran, sprinted through corridors I had walked for 17 cycles, emergency respirator clutched in my claws. I found him in Bay 12, sprawled on the deck plating, unconscious but breathing, barely breathing. Medical arrived within minutes. They stabilized him, got him to the infirmary, pumped him full of detox agents and oxygen. The doctors said he would survive, though he would be coughing up black residue for weeks. When I finally visited him in recovery, Flynn was propped up in bed, still grinning despite the breathing tubes and monitoring equipment. So he croaked, about Kevin. Can he stay? I stared at him. This insane, reckless, impossibly brave human who had saved 37 lives and an entire space station while violating approximately 90 different regulations. Yes, I said finally. Kevin can stay. Ripper. Flynn laughed, which triggered a coughing fit that made the medical staff rush over. Later, much later, after the reports were filed and the commendations issued and Flynn Mackenzie became a minor celebrity in the sector, my supervisor asked me why I let him keep the crocodile. I told her the truth. Sometimes the beings who break the rules are exactly the ones you need when everything falls apart. Plus I had met Kevin. He was actually pretty cute for a prehistoric predator.